Something that makes my family kind of unique is I've always considered us to be a pretty matriarchal family, which I recognize is not the norm in American culture. But the main reason that I believe this about my family is because of my grandmother on my mom's side. Now, I don't have a lot of living grandparents. I don't have a lot of living family in general. My grandmother is my only living grandparent, and she's by far the one that I have the closest relationship to. And today I want to tell some stories about my grandmother because I love her a lot. And she has for years shaped our family dynamic. So if you ever meet my grandmother, to this day, even though she's 84 and she's got gray in her hair is still bright red under there. You can still see the red in her hair. From the day she was born, she was a fiery Appalachian redhead. My grandmother grew up in the mountains of Virginia, and they were dirt poor. Her father was a mountain man. Back in the day, he hunted cougars for the bounty and sold their skins in order to pay off the gambling debts that he had. My great-grandfather was a gambling man. And my grandmother and her older brother Brian, my grandmother's name is Irene, they lived in a little hovel in the hills of Appalachia. And when my grandmother was learning to read, the only book she had to read was the Bible. So she read that over and over again. She taught herself to read the Bible. By the time she went to first grade, it was the only book she'd ever read, but she knew how to read better than anyone in that class. And to this day, the love of my grandmother's life is books. When you ask her, hey, Grandma, if you could do your 84 years of life over again, what would you do differently? The only thing she says is, I would have read more. So, my grandmother's love of her life is reading. And that all started with being too poor to have any book but the Bible and teaching herself to read. And the day my grandmother showed up to first grade on her first day, her older brother had been to school before her, and my grandmother was dressed in her hand-me-downs, in his hand-me-downs. And the teacher comes up to my grandmother and says, Irene, you need to be wearing a dress, because it's the 1940s. You cannot be in school wearing pants. And my grandmother looks her in the eyes and says, my family cannot afford a dress. And the teacher goes, okay. And my grandmother was allowed to wear pants to school every day, because her family could not afford to buy her dresses, and she was only wearing her brother's hand-me-downs. And to this day, my grandmother does not believe in throwing anything away. She still has that Appalachian Depression-era mindset. She saves everything, and she taught my mom to do that, and she taught me to do that. Every glass jar from every can of spaghetti sauce I buy, I save, because I think to myself, what would my Nana say if I were to take something like this and throw it away?